We live in 3 dimensions, which is length, width, and height. We go this way, and we have height to us, as opposed to a shadow, which was only 2-dimensional, if he were alive. Now there's a 4th dimension, which science calls time. Time is a dimension. Now it's interesting. In the Torah, God created the sun and the moon and the stars, which is obviously, besides being luminaries, lights, they're also the things which give rise to time. When the earth is revolving around the sun or whatever it is, that's how we have time. That was created on the 4th day. Maybe it's an allusion to the 4th dimension. But of course, everything has to be from a Torah perspective. But what I'm trying to get at is, not only did God create the luminaries to light, he also created time. Timing is in God's hands. Sometimes we miss a light and we get to an appointment that few minutes late and we're upset about it. But again, all time is a creation of God. Somewhere on that 4th day, he created time as well. So you getting anywhere at any time is in his hands. Of course, if a person is lazy and they woke up late, already they're using their free will. Maybe you could say that they shouldn't have. But even with that, God uses the person's error to still make all time come out the way he wants. And of course, when things happen beyond our control, like missing a light, or someone steals our parking space and now we're running a little late, this for sure is recognizing that that's in God's hands. All timing is in God's hands, which is something we can think about and have less stress over, because we're always worried about timing. Now there's a story to illustrate this in Shemuel, in Samuel, Aleph, the first one, Perek Tet, chapter 9, Pasuk Yud Aleph 11. Actually, it goes through where Shaul, King Saul, was, before he was king, he was supposed to find Shemuel Hanavi, Samuel the prophet, and he was supposed to tell him that he was the king. And he didn't know he was going to meet him. The whole story you can look up there. It says that he went to find his missing donkeys. And he took his servant boy, he said, let's try and find the seer, the prophet. Maybe he'll help us find the donkeys. And it says, when they started to look, it says here, they found a bunch of women, and they asked them, do you know where the seer is? And they answered him. They answered him a long answer. Just to save time, I'll read you in the English. It says here, as soon as you come to the city, you shall find him, before he goes up to the high place to eat. For the people will not eat until he comes, because he blesses the sacrifice. And afterwards, those who are invited eat. And therefore go up, for about this time you shall find him. And then they went and they found Shemuel, and he of course told them that he's now the king, which replaced him from being the leader. Shemuel won't anymore be the leader, but as soon as they met, Shaul became the leader by being the king of the people. Now there's a question brought in the Gemara, in the Talmud. It says, what was the meaning of this whole conversation? Why did the women have to talk so much? Just say, go over there. We'd have to say this, and they're going to eat, and then after he's going to eat, what's all this talk for? So they say 2 answers. First they say that women love to talk. That's actually an answer that they give in the Talmud. Women love to talk. Another answer is, it says, I'll tell you this in the Hebrew, because it's very interesting to see how it says it, this. Rabbi Yochanan said, Lefi she'en malchut noga'at bechaverta afilu kimlo nima. That a kingdom won't touch another person's kingdom, even a hair's breadth. Which means what? Shaul was now going to be replacing Shemuel as the leader of the people. But God had a timetable. Shemuel had to still be the leader for those few more moments. So Hashem arranged the whole setup that the girls would talk for a little extra time so that Shaul won't make it to him yet, and he'll still be the prophet and the leader for those few more minutes. So look how everything is to the second in God's hands. People talking, sometimes that happened to me a few times. Sometimes people would talk, and I'd try to say I have to go to an appointment, and I'd end up talking or listening an extra few minutes. But then that would lead me to whatever I had to do later. In fact, there was a real story like that where someone was talking to me. I was trying to hang up, and I didn't hang up, and I waited a few more minutes, and finally I hung up. And right as I was about to leave the door, another phone call came in, and I closed the door just that second because I would have been out the door. The door was open practically. I went to get the phone, and it was a person I was waiting for all day to speak to for another important matter, and if I wasn't delayed by this other person talking, I would have missed that phone call by a second, and that is a hair's breadth. So it happened to me, such a story. And then, of course, I remembered this teaching, and it felt very good to understand that God is in charge of all the time. This way, when we're late for things, or of course, if we're not lazy and using our free will the wrong way, but assuming if you did everything that you're supposed to do as far as being responsible is concerned, but then other things got in the way, just know that Hashem, God, is timing something. He's leading something to you that in the next few minutes or in that day you're supposed to find or you're supposed to have. And if you would have done things quicker, you may not have found that. So just remember that as a secret.